So the idea of the artist as the lone genius in his garret is a egregious cartoon. You know, it can be art can be as collaborative as any other creative collaborative process, but you do have to have the right partners, and they have to be on the same wavelength. They have to understand and have common goals, and that's what it is with Lucia and I right from the very beginning.
One of the things that Warren and I have often joked about is that, you know, I go at something in a certain way, and he goes at it in another way, and there's something fundamentally which connects us. But we have often said that our brains together are better than separate in terms of understanding something. And I think we've really grown to appreciate that. You know, in the early years you might be sort of arguing more, and now the conversations are intense, but there's also this learning curve where you realize we need to each let the other person really go with their point of view in order to get a synthesis of both points of view, because it's stronger than what we would have if, in the classical sense, one would win the argument. It's much better to synthesize the argument than to divide it down right and wrong. And it really has made a difference. And when we find that the other person isn't available, there's a real absence of understanding. I had just graduated from Hampshire. I had $50 in my pocket, so I could only get as far as Cambridge. I needed to obviously get a job. Got a waitressing job at this great little cafe called the Blue Parrot. Happened to meet Warren the first day I was there. He was a dishwasher. Hair down to here, about 120 pounds, skinny little thing. So intense, vibrating energy, not unlike how he is now. And we sat down at this long picnic table with all the other staff, and he talked to me, and I said to him, so what do you do? And he gave me this most eloquent answer about his love of classical painting, and I particularly remember him talking about Vermeer, and I just was very taken with him.
And I was sitting there with a good friend at the time, and Lucia came down and said, we had a lovely conversation about, she asked me what I did. I said, I painted. Oh, that's interesting. What kind of painting? And I told her about my stuff. And she went back to waitressing, and before I went back to my dishes, I turned to my friend and I said, now, that's a face I could live with for the rest of my life. That's how I met Lucia.
Scientists do it all the time in research. I've been on a few sets in movies. I've watched them do it. You have an idea that you're trying to get, and you pull in all the different minds to say, how do we get that idea? So for Warren and me, using the example of portraiture, we have an idea of what a person is like. We both absorb that person, and then together we try to build an image which is the experience of that person.
For me, the joy of collaboration with Warren and Lucia is based on finding the specificities of a particular moment in time, looking at it from every possible angle, and trying to decide as closely as we can what it really looked like, what happened, and in every detail that can be looked at, make it the way it was. That is the joy for me.
And I'm always fascinated with history. And when I began to realize that painting, an ongoing love from when I was 5 years old, and history could be melded into a single entity, it really, picked up my interest. And of course, the revolution came to mind. The whole thing started tumbling, and I became determined, some way or another, we're going to make some large history paintings and see if we can't give classical painting a shot in the arm by virtue of this, in the public's mind.
For our paintings, in the role of facts, what we discovered, and we really discovered this in the process of making our historic murals. We didn't start by saying facts are so important that we must have them in our paintings. We really started with a question as what happened? On historical events, what would it have felt like? What would it have looked like if you could have been there at that moment in the best spot?
We're saying, no, the facts never hold us back. The facts are what will make us free here. The facts are what's going to bring us to the truer painting, the deeper painting, and we will not step away from the facts.
I have never dealt with a discrete moment in history, particularly one so relatively close to us, where there seems to be almost nothing that you can actually say that is what happened. I have never dealt with something where there was so much confusion, so much straight contradiction between sources. It was really fascinating to try out of this huge cloud to divine what might be the most likely way to make it all work. I think we did a good job.
In history painting, authenticity to the facts is, in the type of history painting I'm trying to do, is crucial in a lot of the ways. We're trying to make a departure from the other, that other operatic style of history painting. So all these small details, which most people aren't interested in, and the reenactors are very interested in. When I was reviewing some of the photographs from the shoot, I saw that there were these tatters that were running down the side of someone's waistcoat, and they were just, filled with the wear and tear of real life. And even that, though I'm sure those guys might even be a little disturbed that their piece wasn't in best shape, even that was just so perfect for me. I said, I get this up to life size. Those things are going to show. I'm going to indicate them. And my kind of painting isn't the sort that pays a lot of attention to minute detail, but I'll strain to put some of that in because I thought the worn and tired look of those things and dirty look of the clothes, even down to those kinds, really bring home the sense of real life. And the power of the piece rests in some of that stuff. It's not the heart of it, but it really augments it. The heart of it's the expressions, but it really augments it. So the enthusiasm of these guys for this stuff is just a great bulwark for us. It just holds up the intentions of the piece. It's very invaluable. It's really great.
In the interests of authenticity, we search around the world actually to find the correct cloth to make things out of, linens from Ireland. And we research original garments, and then we spend the time to pattern and then assemble all these so that when we do something like this, we're living history with the public. We've got the correct clothing on, correct fit, so that we portray the person properly we're trying to portray. What was unique about this experience is Warren has set this up more like a movie shoot. The other ones that we've done for artists have been a little bit different. There wasn't as much of a set up, lighting, tents. It was just, like I said, it's more like a movie shoot than anything I've ever seen before. It was very impressive.
When you try to approach painting with all these variables, you get yourself into a situation and collect all your models together into one place, set them up, and try to make the event, in a sense, happen the same way a cinematographer wants to try to make the event happen. And then find in that your image. Let those variables play themselves out in some sort of a natural way. You find yourself being pulled into what seems to me to be sort of cinematic, to the comic, cinematic technique, to the comic degree. Really? I'm going to yell action? I'm trying to make paintings. But I think it's fascinating because it demonstrates that we've got a cross here in this method that I use between still photography, cinematic techniques, and 17th century painting techniques. I don't want to make a big fuss about this. I think this is the most natural process that you could do. If you want to make a history painting and you don't want to do it in the old-fashioned way, which is to draw each one of our subjects separately, develop the image in your mind and assemble them very carefully, each one posing separately, imagining the relationship between one figure to the other, that very careful construction system yields a more deliberate looking, less, to our modern eyes, less spontaneous, less true looking image than what I think this process results in. So you're compelled down this road, and it's actually very exciting.
If you look at the 18th century drawing, it looks like the moment of emotion for me, the moment of I can't believe what I'm seeing, is after having spent 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, however long it was, really working almost non-stop on this, starting from a complete, utter ground zero. Let's see what we can know about this. The whole process of coming to a feeling of, yes, this is my best guess for what happened.
In the scene that I'm playing Jonathan Pollard, and Asa Pollard, my brother, is laying in front of me after he's been hit by the cannonball, you have different thoughts going through your mind. You're trying to show the correct facial expression, so you try to envision him actually laying there with his shoulder taken off or the back of his head gone, and it's a pretty moving experience. You have to do that or else it's not going to come out right in the painting.
Action. To see those people, living, fleshly people, in our best take at what it would have looked like in the 18th century, and to see in my mind, behind it, there's Copp's Hill, there's the North Church. To see the part that no one else could see, the 18th century world in the mist around them, that was remarkable.
The real theme of the painting is how a community handles the death of one of its own. One of its own has fallen, and each of the figures here address the issue. The painting gets to hold still in a way that even somebody who was there on the spot would not have been able to perceive it. It holds still the moment, epiphanous moment, at which all these men face the reality of their dead friend or relative and face that issue of mortality. So it's in a sense a scaffold or an excuse to discuss mortality and how we react to it, how each individual reacts in his own way to it, and of course it's the big theme for all of us. It's the big issue we all have to settle.
And one of the interesting things about this moment in the Revolutionary War is this is sort of the moment at which people decide, which are you going to be? It may be all very well and good to sit down at the tavern on Saturday night and get really angry about the Stamp Act and all the bad things the king is doing to you and his ministers. But when you see the first person dead in front of you, someone that you know, someone who, in point of fact, some of these men were related to, that is the moment when you decide, cows need milking, about time to go home and do that, ya? Or you decide, it begins here, I'll see it through.
And what fascinates me is I don't think some of those issues are that different than certain questions we are today as Americans being faced with. Hard questions. Do you go off and die? Do you let other people go off and die? What are your values? What will you fight for? There's nobody who wants to go out and just fight and die, so we do it for certain reasons. And I would love to have the discussion be, when these murals are done, the relevancy of the questions raised then with the questions we're facing now and the relationship between that, and have people realize it may be 300 years away in terms of chronology, but in terms of who we are, it could be, Asa Pollard could be standing right next to you.
I think that moment of seeing someone die and what it means, yes, there's a battle, someone died, so now we're going to have a war, but it's also a family was affected, friends were affected, and there's a massive amount of ripple effect that goes through a society because of one death. And we've forgotten that because we're so used to the amount of people who have died, genocide, wars, that I think we forget how important one life is and how affecting one death is, not only to the families, but it can, you know, be a rallying call too. Certainly in this painting, when you look at it, you see in some of the faces the devastation and the determination. So one death really is so profound in, you know, so many different layers. And I think our society is forgetting that. So a painting like this, you come up to it and you look at this and you say, there was a family, there were friends, there were colleagues, there was a community. And this one person affects them throughout history. We're still talking about Asa Pollard, who is the young man killed in this painting many years later.
In my mind, I see kids coming in front of those pieces and something hitting them. And they're time traveling. They're time traveling the same way we've had to time travel in making it, which, what happened to those people? And how did those people feel when it was happening? And there is something happen, and we all know this from our love of film, that happens visually that can't be expressed in words. And Warren and I really have this very strong feeling that painting, in a world that's going so quickly, actually can slow you down. And one day I was thinking about it and I thought it's a little bit like intimate attention. You pull in, and it's like a whisper. You listen. And in this world that's moving so fast, that's really what I mean when I say I'm hoping it's going to reach the broader community, that they will feel that.